Welcome, listeners, to episode 10. Big number 10 of the Simply Sports Podcast. I am your host, Josh K, and I'd like to thank you guys for tuning in to today's episode. I'd obviously like to start off the episode by thanking off our sponsor, IPS Insurance. Yes, he's a guest in today's episode. Insurance so good, you'd hope something bad happens to you. I'd also like to thank you guys for supporting the show in any way that you can. We've got a great episode this week, guys. I've invited, yes, like I just mentioned, my dad on the show for the big milestone 10th episode. He's been a guy behind the scenes helping all this, helping getting it started. I think it was only right to get him in here for the big milestone episode. He's obviously been a parent in sports for years now with my brother and I, so we are going to be talking about parents in sports and, you know, the rights and the wrongs, and during a time like this at COVID, you know, what their roles should be, what their perspectives and their point of views should be. But I did want to get another point of view in here. So I did invite Jamie Nichols, one of my dad's and mine, very good friends, big guy in squash, executive director, head of Squash Canada. He was in Squash Ontario just a little bit ago, a coach, a junior himself, and not a parent just yet, but I'm sure he will be with his two daughters one day. But before we get to anything else, let's quickly recap what's happened in sports. It's not much, but big news, the NBA draft was this past Wednesday night, and it was pretty good. I watched it with a couple buddies. Obviously, there were some emotional players, you know, very, very happy to get drafted into the NBA, some emotional parents, happy that their sons and families got the opportunity to, you know, be on TV and get that big moment for their lives. I think a lot of people would like to talk about, you know, the Chicago Bulls pick number 4. Who is Patrick Williams? I don't know. Do you guys know? A lot of people are talking about the kind of weird, risky, possibly good pick that they took. But otherwise, it was a great night. Some pretty big names, and definitely some big expectations from the fans of certain teams. And finally, just to quickly recap, the Masters at Augusta did just finish this past Sunday with Dustin Johnson taking home the championship, the green jacket. Pretty big deal. I'm not a huge golf fan myself, but apparently it was pretty good. I watched a little bit of it. Once again, another sport that did an amazing job of holding events during a time like this. They did not have crowds, but you know, they went through 4 days of golf, very successful, and they finished without any problems. But that's it for the recap, guys. I think we might as well get our guests in here, Jamie Nichols and my dad, the sponsor of IPS Insurance. Let's talk about parenting in sports with them. Let's get them in here. Well, I would like to introduce my two guests for the episode. Tuning in virtually from home, we got Jamie Nichols. Welcome, and you know, live in person, we got our sponsor, IPS Insurance, my dad, Simon K. How's it going, guys?
Excellent. Thanks for having me, Josh.
Yeah, likewise.
Well, you know, like we do at this show, I don't think there's any sugarcoating, anything you have to go on. Let's just get right into it. You know, let's start off with the basic idea of this conversation. I told people the topic was, you know, parenting in sports. This crazy time going on. What do parents have to do well? What are they maybe making mistakes on? And I know you two have a lot of experience in that for sure. I know I've experienced it firsthand with this guy over here. But let's start off. What is the ultimate goal in parenting in sports? Like, start us off.
You want me to start off?
Sure. Why not?
As the parent?
As the parent, why not?
And the sponsor.
And the sponsor.
Yeah. So, you know, it's a really fine line. I mean, the goal ultimately is to, you know, it's sort of twofold. You want to have a kid who is a high performer in the sport, and then at the same time, you don't want to hurt the relationship. So you want them to, you know, in a perfect world, there's this really narrow space where you've got a truly happy family life, and at the same time, you have this kid that is a high performer and achieving everything. I mean, it's just such a narrow laneway, though, that the odds of actually achieving that are just so unbelievably slim that one of those is going to get out of balance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. I think that's we can experience it right in squash, right? We see a lot of international players we play at the higher performing level, right? So you see some parents obviously want their kids to succeed, but they don't see the fine line of taking away their social, their personal lives.
Jamie has obviously a different perspective, or maybe a more objective one as a coach looking on, and of course has now two very young kids that no doubt he'll be experiencing it himself. But that balance sort of goes out of whack when the parent has more. It depends on where their motivation is. So if they are more attached to, living out all of their own personal unfulfilled dreams through their kids, and they're forcing their kids to be winners because the win is actually more theirs than it is the kid, then your priorities are off, and now you're going to be treating your child with all the wrong motivation. The problem, of course, is, and Jamie and I have talked about this, and you and I have talked about this for years, is just even the parent having the self-awareness to know that their motivation is off. They're not aware that they're doing it for themselves, the win, not for the kid's well-being.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Jamie, you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, Simon's got a lot of experience, and I think we're probably 10 years in now, right, Simon, since I started watching you go through this journey. So, I mean, it really is a journey, all sorts of bumps and, dips in the road. But yeah, there's a lot to it. And as I have now two very young daughters, I'm starting to think about it, and I'm nervous because it's not easy. And, it's easy to talk about, but it's hard to actually execute over a long period of time. And so, there's so much to it, but there's no answer. There's no right answer, a cookie cutter answer. I've seen some of the best ever parents kind of lose their way a little bit. And I've seen some, quote unquote, bad parents get the results they're looking for. So there's no right answer, but I think Simon sort of nailed it when he said, when the alignment of the goals is dishonest, or there is not an alignment of the goals, what the parents trying to achieve and the athletes trying to achieve, that's where you see the biggest breakdowns, in my opinion.
Yeah, totally. And now I think we both spoke to the goal, right? That's what ultimately the parents want to achieve. That's the perfect combination. But what's the reality, right? We've seen a lot of examples of this, especially in squash. I'm sure not a lot of the viewers out there know about it. But it's a pretty good community. Lots of families, lots of parents as coaches, or at least definitely being involved with their kids and their play. But I don't know if what that goal that we speak of is actually the true reality.
Yeah, so that's a really interesting point. So that's where, as Jamie refers to, my sort of evolution as a sports parent has changed so much since your brother Jackson. He got the raw end of this deal. There's no doubt about it. My motivation, while I was one of those parents that off to the side talking to the other parents saying, it's all about having fun, and as long as they're learning, and that's all garbage, to be honest. I mean, it was, sorry, I shouldn't say it's garbage. It is what it should be. But in reality, that was where I was fooling myself with Jackson, and way harder on him, because, again, you just wanted that win. And there's an emotional attachment to that win. And in squash, where there's no prize at the end of the day, like big money contracts or whatever, I can only imagine that, the hockey parents and whatnot are they're under even more pressure, because they want the win, but they also want their kid to be famous, and they want their kid to have tons of dough and all the rest of it. Our basketball parents, it's the same thing. And as I evolved to you and sort of let that go and had some awareness around it, then I realized it was about, being happy, and it was about work ethic. And it was more my goal for you. And you can remember, I didn't tolerate you giving up. I didn't tolerate you not trying. If I'm going to go out of my way to pay for tournaments and your training and your coaching, like, you better show up, because that was all that was sort of important to me. And then you start to see the sort of the byproduct of that in the schoolwork and the independence and the social behavior. And then you realize, like, that's what the goal is. The goal is, who cares? Like, the odds that you're going to be successful financially and otherwise in the sport is so slim. And Jamie, you can speak to this. The people that we know that are, number one, it takes a really sort of obscure person to even be able to achieve that. And question is, is that, if you knew what the goal was going to produce, would you even want that for your kid? Which is interesting. So I think the awareness of understanding that number one is not what it's cracked up to be. The odds are very low. And, the bigger opportunity is to create success in life. And it sounds a little bit cliche, but it is absolutely the truth. And it changes the way that you parent, do the sport parenting.
Yeah, totally. And, you obviously have that perspective as a parent. But, Jamie, you have been, like a sports director, like that kind of guy looking from, behind, not behind the scenes, but like from, you can see from far away. You can see everything that goes on and the way parents are with their kids in all these big tournaments. And what can you say to that? Is that the real reality, or are parents having a hard time achieving that goal of kind of having that balanced combination between the connections and the relationships between them and their kids?
Yeah, I would say one of my favorite things about doing what I do is when I see a parent sort of 2 or 3 years after their kids finish juniors, even a little bit longer after they've gone through college, maybe 5 or 6 years, and all of that anxiety and stress and pressure and the late phone calls and emails about their forehand or backhand, all the stress is totally gone, because 99% of people that grow up and go through junior squash are successful people. So, very rarely does it not kind of work out in the end. And so that's something that I'm enjoying as I get a little bit older, and I see, a kid I coached, 5 or 6 years ago, and it all worked out, right? So there's that side of it. And if, I'm very confident that in our sport, if you go through junior squash, you're going to be successful to some level. So that doesn't stress me out during the process. The process is the most important part. When you talk about, being successful in life and all the fluffy stuff that Simon likes to talk about, ultimately I do want a world champion, and I do want Canada to be the best squash nation in the world. And so, that balance is critical, and it's the hardest thing, to find, is somebody who wants to be number one in the world, but also a happy person. And so that's the conflict of it, and it will happen. We're going to get players that are going to get there, but I'm very confident as a coach that if you go through the process, you're going to be successful in junior squash.
So here's the question, though, if I can jump in. So Jamie, you as an association, high performance director working with Squash Ontario, Squash Canada, and so on, you clearly, part of your mandate is to get a champion. Would you want one of your kids to be that champion, though?
It's great. And so Jessica, my wife, is one of the best squash coaches in Canada. And we had this conversation last night because I knew I was coming on here. And, that's the conflict. We don't know. And the question we were sort of left with was, does our daughter want to become a world champion? It doesn't really matter what I want, right? And we have to remember that. So if our daughters are hardwired to be the best players in the world, then yeah, that's what we want. But if they don't, then that's also what we got to want.
Yeah, I think it definitely takes a specific type of person to have that type of mindset. I think for sure in squash that those best number one world champion type of people are definitely risking what's the word I'm thinking of, kind of like leaving a couple things out of the equation, like taking away some of their social life.
Yeah, sacrifices,
like, right?
Yeah,
sacrifices,
huge,
exactly.
Huge. By the way, just before you go on, Josh, so by the time Jamie's kids are going to be juniors, you and Jackson will both be long out of it, and I guarantee you I'm going to every single junior tournament just to watch Jamie freak out because he has no idea what he's in for. He's going to be developing ulcers and
You think you're going to spend all this time doing us and just leave Squash Canada or squash tournaments like that? No, he's going back just to support.
I'm going for sure. This is
the
best entertainment.
I'm going to need you in my corner, Simon, just like I was in your corner.
Okay, so next question here is more specifically to you, Dad. Going through, not fully through me, but 2 kids. I know we just spoke about it. You're evolving, your evolution through the squash parenting. But what do you think the main things that has gone through your head that you've realized that has evolved in your parenting through what works and what doesn't work because I know definitely me and Jackson have had the conversation, and it can easily admit that I got the easier end.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, it's like, what is it that changed so much? What?
Well, I mean, there were a couple of key moments. I mean, bottom line is you know, when you treat your kid a certain way with way too much pressure, and you're, you know, for me, as you know, like my relationship with you guys is paramount. It's the most important thing.
Yeah.
When you see yourself from the outside, and again, it comes back to what I said in my first comments about awareness. When you're aware that you're actually alienating your kid, and that there's nothing which is you know, nothing could be so valuable that it could get in the way of that. And I'm not saying that all parents think this way. Some are like, no, it's, you know, that's not as important. It's just a matter of priorities. So going through a couple things like, you know, driving home from a Woodbridge tournament and literally blasting Jackson for the entire drive home, and you get into the driveway and you go, Jackson hasn't said a word. I haven't stopped talking the entire time. And you have this awareness that you're not doing this for him. You're doing this for yourself. You're getting out the anger and all the rest of it. So it's these monumental moments when you go, and I know I can't swear on this show, but like where you just, you know, effed up completely your relationship, or you're on the verge of it. So you if you don't change your ways, you know, it's like anything in life. If you there are these moments that are so big that you say, I have to change my behavior. And it just goes from realizing that it's not about me, you know, and seeing, you know, the value. You know, Jackson was the what we jokingly call the Andy Murray of his group. He was always in the top four, but he was always like kind of number four. And yet, Murray, you know, his personal success and evolution and awareness and work ethic, everything, like it's a 10 out of 10. So you know, it's not until retrospect you look back and you say, well, this clearly all worked, but thankfully I sort of nipped it in my behavior in the bud, and I still, you know, that was going to happen. To Jamie's point, that success was going to happen anyway. What wasn't necessarily going to be a guarantee is that I'd have a good relationship with them. So stopping early meant that I actually ended up sort of winning the lottery, so to speak.
Yeah, and
but I'll mess you up before you're done. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, I still got a few years to go. He's got lots of time to time to mess up with my junior career.
I think you're doing okay.
But that's exactly what you said, right? Is when you go out of the junior career and you're done everything, you look at him. He's, oh my God, he's like crazy work ethic. Like that guy knows how to, like, if he has a goal or if he, you know, has something to get done, he'll get it done, right? No matter what.
And he won't accept a lower quality. He won't mail it in. You know, and again, there's a self-awareness because, you know, Jamie, you can comment to this because you were a junior yourself and a coach. When you're in a glass cage basically by yourself and it's just you, you're responsible for you. And that's probably the biggest thing I think you learn from a lot of sports is, you know, there's no one to blame. You got to take responsibility. And I think that's probably one of the biggest things that you take with you out of sort of just the discipline of being an athlete.
Yeah, totally. And now to you, Jamie, is that's kind of like a more, like, not an opposite to what we just talked about with my dad is, but you have been obviously a junior yourself, so everything we've talked about, I'm sure you've experienced some of it yourself in your junior career. Been a coach, a club owner over at the NSA, and now a head of sports of a sports association. But you're not you don't have the parent perspective just yet. I know you for sure will one day. But what is the most common observation you have on parents in sports, based on kind of what he just said? Do you find them doing well, or, you know, what are some of the mistakes based on what you've experienced already so far, being a non-parent?
Well, yeah, it's I've seen a lot. I'm about 20 years in now, and it's changed so much since we were juniors. And you hear the coaches talk about this all the time. Well, back when I was a junior, the parents were involved, and it really is a lot different. And so as coaches, we battled that for a little bit, and I did myself. I said, this isn't right. This isn't how it is. But it has changed, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. So, what I've seen over the last, 10 years is the parents are very much involved. They're going to be involved. So you might as well, as a coach, have them involved in the right way instead of just trying to, keep them not at the club or not at the tournament. So, the observations that I see and my, evolving as a coach is that the communication needs to be really clear between the coaches, both parents, not just one parent, and the support team. And if everybody's on the same page, that's where the magic works. Mm-hmm. But as soon as there's a misalignment of those goals, or even the coach and the player might have a closer relationship in some ways than the coach and the parent, or the athlete is afraid to tell his parent that he doesn't actually want to do, X, Y, and Z. So mm-hmm. those lines of communication need to be really clear, and the coaches are a big part of that because they're kind of the mediators between it all. So, I see the misalignment of goals as a huge one. And then to Simon's point, the letting go moment. And that, there'll be a time where a kid is more likely to listen to their parent than their coach. And the parent has a massive impact in those early sort of formative years. But there is a point where the parent must let go. And that's hard. Like, I've seen it. Mm-hmm. I remember when Simon was going through that with Jackson. It's not easy. And I remember you saying to me, Simon, I just want to be there. I just enjoy it. And I'm sort of looking at you going, I don't think you're enjoying this. And I know that. So that moment needs to be like really clearly almost communicated with the athlete and the parent. And the parent should say, do you want me to come today? How do you want me to be? And at some point the kid has to be honest, and the kid's not always honest. That's a big problem. Kid has to say, I don't want you there today. And so that's what I see. Mm-hmm. The best stories are when that communication line is very clear.
Yeah, and being a junior myself, like if you ever ask that question, do you want me there? You never want to, hurt your parents' feelings, even if the truth is, yeah, sorry, I don't want you there today. Yeah. But like you mentioned, I thought it was a really, really interesting point is sometimes actually your coach is that person that if you aren't comfortable or feel that you can't talk to your parent about something, the coach is almost that second parent, right? Like they're always kind of open to, if you're saying, I have a hard time in matches when, I look out and maybe my parent's disappointed, or my I'm not doing well and I feel bad that I'm letting my parent down. Like there's stuff like that, right? And stuff like that is hard to talk to your parents about, for sure. So the coach's perspective in squash, I don't know if I'm sure it is sport wide, but I think squash specifically is a huge part, for sure.
It's not such a bad thing that your kid would feel bad for hurting your feelings. Mm-hmm. Obviously, that means you've probably done a good job in your kid being at least having some compassion and empathy, and but there still needs to be a way. It doesn't mean that the conversation doesn't need to happen. Mm-hmm. So again, to your point, going to your coach and saying like, my dad brings my game down, a good notch because I just feel too much pressure. How should I deal with this? Mm-hmm. I think a lot of coaches were juniors. So, and whether you're in hockey or whether you're in soccer or basketball or whatever it is, I mean, I think your coach, plays a significant role there. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you guys, I'm sure Jamie, you probably remember this story. It was really kind of a funny story, but I think Jackson was probably about, 12 or 13, and he ceremoniously fired me as his coach right in the car. It's like I looked in the rearview mirror, and he was clearly welling up. I mean, I don't think he won't be embarrassed by this story, but clearly he was very, very upset. I was like, Jackson, what's going on? He goes, I don't know why my eyes are all, watering up here. And then we got to this story where he basically said, like, I don't really know how to tell you this, but all I know is that when you tell me to do stuff, like, I kind of don't listen, but when Jamie tells me to do stuff, like, it sinks in right away. So, like, do you mind if you stop coaching me and Jamie starts coaching me? So, like, he wanted to let me down easy, but, kids will, I think from the kid's perspective, I think the kid needs to be given the tools to know how to have that conversation. From a parent perspective, you need to create a forum to let your kids voice what they want, whether it's to be world champion, whether it's to, I want to lighten up on squash, or I want to increase it, or I want this coach or that coach. I think just I don't know, it sounds cliche, but just try and create a safe environment for that communication. The parent needs to be opening to hearing things that maybe they don't want to hear.
Yeah,
So
totally.
they got to be open to it.
For sure.
Yeah,
For sure.
well,
And also from to put a coach's spin on that too, the coach, like the players don't want to disappoint the coaches either. So, I'd have player meetings every season and they'd say, what is your goal this year? Okay, well, I want to win nationals. And I'd say, that's great. And then a couple of weeks later I go, I don't think you actually do want to win nationals. Do you want to win nationals? And, they don't want to say no, but the answer is no, because they're clearly not putting the work in. So, there's that open communication between the coach and the player as well. But also there's going to be a time when a coach needs to step aside, right? And so any great player is going to have 5 to 10 coaches that really influence them. So the coaches need to have that conversation with the players too and say, listen, we're hitting a bit of a wall here. Why don't you go see this person? And so it's all about communication every step of the way.
Totally. Well, I got one more question here, but I think before we get to the last question, I wanted to let the viewers know before we get to do it. If anyone's wondering what this hat is up here, I'm gonna do a little self promotion. This is the BNR Beavers, the one that Jamie's wearing. Big team in our family. We got the team owner actually right here and team player right here. It's a big deal if anyone knows it.
Too, aren't you?
Sure, you could call it that, I guess.
Your shirt's right there.
Yeah, I guess maybe I played a couple matches this season. But just if anyone was wondering, I thought we'd do a little self promotion.
Slap the tail.
Slap the tail. Okay. So last question. We got COVID. It's COVID time around here. Big.
No, we don't have COVID.
Sorry, we don't have COVID. Yes, let's make that sure. Us as a community have COVID, and there's lots of stuff to be talked about, lots of stuff to be said when you're an athlete, right? With training and motivation at this time. For me specifically, squash courts, you can't. I guess you can, but you can't really play with anyone unless you want to social distance on court, and we can all relate. It's not the same. I've got lucky with my brother. Whenever he's back, I can play with him because that's household. That's one thing you are allowed. But I think, no tournaments. Some kids want to keep training. Some kids want to keep motivated, and some kids want to sit and play video games all day. That's there's two totally realistic opinions, realistic points of view. But what I want to ask both of you is, how do you think parents should be involved? Like, what should their roles be, in their kids' lives, I guess, at a time like this?
It's interesting that by taking your foot off the gas with your kid and sort of imposing what they need to do, they will find their new norm. Like, so I know with you, you didn't play a lot of squash. It was an opportunity to sort of recalibrate, but now I can see that you're sort of getting more. Your body's almost telling you got to get back on the squash court. And so I think it's a leap of faith, because it's been several months of me going, geez, like, is he going to get back into this or not? But the reality is that it's going to get back to the point where you're going to make the rules for yourself. And if you don't love it, I need to accept that you're saying, you know what, I'm done. Or you're going to say, no, you know what, I've never been more into it and I can't wait to get back. I miss it so much. So
yeah,
it's a hands-off approach. At least for me, it's been a very hands-off approach. And, just make sure that you stay physical and active and all the rest of it.
Yeah, I totally can relate to that, because obviously you're speaking of me. I am your kid. But, being off for a while has been great. I've spent the past probably 6 years going pretty hard, 4, 5, 6 times a week, sessions, lessons, doing some workouts, stuff like that. And I've had some of those times, right? Those moments where, oh my God, like, I don't want to do this. Like, this is just getting too hectic or too much pressure or stuff like that. But then you actually get it taken away from you. And I've spoken to so many people about this, is I've never actually missed it more than I have now. Right? This is what I needed to make me realize how much I needed that, that 4 or 5 times a week guarantees that I knew that I could feel that physical activity and feel healthy, almost. Like, it makes me feel good, right? So
so it's a phenomenal opportunity in essence to hand off the power of decision making by me letting you not doing it. I say letting you, but by creating space, and now your love of it has increased and your missing of it has increased. You're probably more likely to make all the major decisions about your squash career for your remaining squash years, junior years, on your own. It's actually kind of been a gift because I can actually almost be hands off to a certain extent. So see Jamie's smirking because he thinks that there's another answer here. He thinks I'm full of it. But no, anyway, go ahead, start hacking on it.
As usual, you're setting yourself up to take the credit either way. Whatever happens.
That's a good point. That's what I do.
No, I see. I'm talking to all the national team athletes right now, and as many of our players as we can. It's brutal. Like it's very tough to stay motivated, and everybody's handling it differently. I do think a lot of people are going to reset, and I think it's going to be good. I think bodies are going to heal, minds are going to heal, people are going to get that spark back, like what you're talking about, Josh. Actually missing it is actually a huge win. For long term. But on the flip side of it, this is a way, and if you really want to get good, there's a bit of natural selection going on here. It's the harder it is to stay motivated, you're going to see the best players are going to be the ones that are able to do it. So I think it's an opportunity. If I was a top junior right now, I would be solo hitting like crazy. There's nobody on the courts. I'd be working on things like visualization and starting to sharpen up my mental game. There's a study that I wrote down that I think is really interesting. 10 basketball players went and shot hoops for a week straight, and their scores after a week, every day for a week straight, and their scores after a week got 10% better. 10 players shot basketballs one day, went back into their didn't play basketball, but visualized every day for a week. And their scores, when they came back a week later, actually also got 10% better. So I just thought that was a funny thing. If it was me, I'd be playing a squash match, visualizing a squash match every single night, if I was really into it. But some people are going to just take a break, and I'm sure they're going to come out the other end just as well served.
Yeah, totally. And I guess we did kind of talk about it, but the role of parents, and I wanted to specifically talk more about I guess nutrition almost. Like we kind of did talk about it, but that's I think a big thing is in most households, like the parents can almost not choose, but they're gonna be like cooking most of the meals, right? Unless, like, for me, I know, like, I usually make my breakfast and my lunches usually, like, for myself, and that's ultimately up to me, whether I want to, keep eating healthy or, just don't, right? Once again, that's the biggest thing for me, for so many of these guys, is where there really isn't any of that physical motivation, right? There's no, like, tournaments ahead of us, like, there's nothing really to train for as of right now. Right? So it's all at this point mental motivation, where that, if I keep going and maybe other people's kind of slack off, then that means I'm going to be ahead of everyone, and then when tournaments do come back, I'm going to be amazing. Okay, really, really quickly here to end. We've been talking about this, all this motivation tournament stuff. So I thought it was just really interesting. I know you mentioned it to me for the first time yesterday. Jamie, if you want to talk about it at all, I know that Squash Ontario's kind of been planning something maybe for January, maybe like a tournament or something that we could change it up a little if we're allowed to. If you want to talk about it at all, I'm sure I find it very interesting. I'm sure our viewers would find it interesting as well.
Yeah, I can say from a Squash Canada standpoint, I know the work I had been doing with Squash Ontario. Squash is going to come out of this prepared. So there's a lot of work being done behind the scenes right now. And again, we're using this as an opportunity to position our sport as, a leader in return to play and getting back on the courts. So I can tell you that there's been some developments on rapid testing. We have a COVID-19 task force that's got some just incredible people on it that are forward thinking. And so we will have the potential to have rapid testing in place potentially as early as January, where we can start having some controlled tournaments. And I think we're going to be way ahead of most sports in this. It's going to be done super safely, following all the protocols times 10. But I think we're going to be in a good position in the new year. And then, this has been a tough go, but the spring isn't that far away, and I'm hoping to get back to normal by then.
So, what are a couple of logistics? Like a select number of people, they go in at spaced out times, they get rapid tested. Just what are a couple highlights?
Yeah, they're talking about draws of 8 people coming in and just doing the tournament in one day. So you'd have maybe 32 players come in one day, and then 32 players come in the next day, boys, girls, however you split it up. Everyone would get a rapid test in the morning. They're about 15 minutes. So, everyone would be tested on site, and then they'd go, through and play their day. And if we can replicate that a couple of times, January, February, March, we'd have a doctor on site sort of administrating it all. I think it's possible.
Yeah,
Amazing.
I don't know how many sports can say that they're planning that for the future, which is pretty awesome.
Incredible.
Well, guys, that was a great conversation today. I had a really great time. It was super interesting getting that perspective. Yeah, thanks so much for coming on the show. It was great. I'm sure we'll see. I know I'll see you every single day. But Jamie, I'm sure I'll see you soon.
Simon, make sure you don't critique Josh now for 10 minutes after the show.
Oh no, I'm doing it. I'm
Just
doing
let
it
him
for
be.
sure. He'll be
Car ride home.
He'll be in tears in about 10 minutes.
Oh,
All the
no, not
screw-ups.
again. Not
Well,
again.
guys, thank you. Well, we'll see our guests next time. Thanks. Bye. Well, viewers, thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode and watching. Hopefully you can comment on the video, any suggestions you might have. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and please share whatever platform you want, social media. That's always great, but of course, no pressure if you can't. Once again, thanks to our sponsor, IPS Insurance. He was a guest today. He did great. It was a great conversation. Both of them have super cool perspectives. I know it's interesting, me being his son, experiencing some of this stuff firsthand. It's good for me to listen and hear him say it. But if you aren't able to watch it on YouTube, no problem. You can always watch it, I'm sure, on Spotify shortly after I post it at Simply Sports. But of course, if I can suggest, it is a little better on YouTube with that visual aspect. Today was pretty big episode for the look. We did one person in live, one person virtually. We got everything in the back. 2 mics, the headsets. It was pretty successful today. So hope you like that. But that's it for me, guys. Your host, Josh K. I'm going to be signing off. We'll see you at the next one. Hope you have a good rest of your week. See ya. Bye.